Okay, let's get. We are excited to have you with us as we explore two thought-provoking themes today: mastering self-promotion and embracing adaptability, and navigating change with visionary focus. The International Youth in Canadian Agriculture is committed to empowering young individuals, students, and professionals with the tools and insights they need to thrive. Today's discussion will focus on skills and strategies that are universally applicable, no matter your career path in the field of agriculture. Thank you for joining us. We are excited to dive into these important topics as we hear from our fantastic speakers. At this point, I would like to introduce our moderator for today, Ms. Tacarra Birmingham. Ms. Birmingham is an attaché in the Office of Agricultural Affairs in Ottawa, Canada. She has extensive experience in agricultural, business, and community development. Earlier, she's an attaché in the Office of Agricultural Affairs in Ottawa with extensive experience in agricultural, business, and community development. And today she will be moderating the event. So Tacarra, you can take it from there.
Sure thing. And I hope everyone can hear me okay. If for any reason you guys have any trouble hearing anything I'm saying, please feel free to jump in and shout it out. Thank you so much, Deborah and Timmy and everyone for inviting me to be a part of this session today. As Deborah mentioned, I am the agricultural attaché based here in Ottawa, Canada. By way of Washington, D.C., originally from Chicago, Illinois. So one of the latest transplants to this country. So I cover a wide range of agricultural issues on behalf of the U.S. government, working extensively in data analysis, marketing, and also agricultural policy. I had the pleasure of running into these two awesome people here, Deborah and Timmy, at a recent workshop. And they were like, hey, you want to come and check out what we're doing? It's pretty cool. So I'm here today. I'm here to check it out and listen in and hope to facilitate a very engaging discussion amongst you guys. Again, thanks so much for giving up some time on a Saturday to do this. And we can get started. I'll go ahead and introduce you to our first speaker. His name is Clinton Monchuk. He's the executive director of Farm and Food Care based there in Saskatchewan. So we'll keep rolling, and Clinton, I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Well, thank you all, and thank you for having me on this. I am just going to share my screen here. I did put together a PowerPoint presentation. That should be shared. I'll put it in presenter view. As mentioned, I am the executive director of Farm and Food Care, and before I get into some of what I want to talk about today, I want to just kind of go through a little bit of what's your why. So a lot of us have different paths in life, and I think that was mentioned before, but when you understand your why in terms of why you're wanting to be in agriculture, it helps define a little bit of how you're going to ensure that why happens. So like I mentioned, everybody has a different path in life. What is my why is right here, these next two pictures. So this is a picture of my dad is on the right, my son is in the middle, and I'm on the other side. We operate a grain farm in Saskatchewan, right around 4,000 acres, which 1 acre is roughly the size of a football field. And we've been doing that on our family farm. Actually, my great-grandpa homesteaded right across the road from where we currently farm in 1906. So this family farm has been around for a long time, and that's what's passionate to me as an individual in agriculture. All the things that have kind of accumulated in my life, I'm going to talk about them here in a little bit, but a lot of what I do is for my family. I feel that is kind of my passion, is the family and our ability to produce food. And if you're in agriculture right now, I hope some of that passion to produce food and do what you can do for not only your own family, but for the rest in Canada and around the world ends up showing. So what I'm going to be talking about today is a little bit about the professions that I've gone through in my career and what this can kind of relate to you as an individual as well. So I like to start off with this presentation in terms of, is there any profession that you don't actually have to interact or build relationships in? And really the answer is no, especially in agriculture. Agriculture is a very relationship building industry, and you'll find that a lot of what we do is based on relationships. So I'm going to talk about my experience, and then we're going to have some questions afterwards if you all have any questions. So really the takeaway right off the bat is, if the most important thing to do going forward in the agriculture industry is market use. So then the question is, how do we do that? So I'm going to go through a few examples of my experience. I started my career after my undergraduate degree at the University of Saskatchewan as a banker. And really, the banking industry is all about trust. When you trust somebody to give them a loan, you trust somebody to take on that risk or do something new, there has to be trust in what's being talked about, whether you're the farmer or the banker in that relationship. And a lot of those relationships, they can get kind of tough at times, understanding the true issues that you have to deal with. So for example, if your farm's not doing very well, you have to have that honest conversation with the banker. And similarly, if you're that banker and you can see that the financials are coming in and not showing a lot of profitability, what are those steps that are going to be taken to reduce that risk or increase that level of profitability? So communication comes in. There's also negotiations. There's many different ways to find an end result that's both win-win for both the farmer and the banker. And you need to understand what the bottom lines are, not only for you as a banker, but those bottom lines for the clients as well. So again, there's an effect of a negotiation that has to take place in order to understand that. After I was done that, I ended up working as an economist with ranchers and feedlot operators here in Saskatchewan. And back in the early 2000s, there weren't a lot of ranchers and farmers. Sorry, I should back up. Ranchers, I mean beef cattle ranchers. So they were growing cattle for beef production. Here in the province of Saskatchewan, we have roughly about 14 to 16,000 ranchers or cattle producers. And back in the early 2000s, a lot of them didn't fully understand their finances very well. And you had to have a lot of kind of tough look at the inside inner dealings of a business. And one of the things that taught me is the level of confidence you need when you talk to some of these individuals. If you know the numbers on their farms or their ranches better than they do, you have a lot of information that you can share with them in an effort to make them better at their businesses. Back in the early 2000s, the biggest thing, farmers just didn't want to pay taxes. And I still think to a certain degree that exists today. They don't want to pay taxes, but at the same extent, they sometimes make business decisions that aren't necessarily based solely on profitability. So you got to look at that and how their numbers benchmark against others. And I still look at that today. On our own farm, we benchmark our numbers up against other similar farms to see what we're doing and what we can do better as we move forward. Sorry. Really, at the end of the day, if they're family ranches or family farms, they still need to be profitable. And really, the goal with all this was to make sure that the industry as a whole would be more profitable. And then, quite frankly, the 2003, there was the first case of BSE, which is mad cow disease in Canada, and that kind of set the industry upside down. And it took a long time for the industry to get back into business, but working with the ranchers and the cattle industry at that time, trying to identify how we could kind of keep some of these farms going was beneficial and definitely fulfilling. The next one that I had, I actually worked in Washington, D.C. for a little while. I was a lobbyist. I was a lobbyist for quite a few years on differing levels for American farmers and ranchers, for Canadian farmers and ranchers, and then for the chicken industry in Canada. Um, the big thing was trying to understand how you deal with people in different ways. And for example, I remember numerous times meeting with different congressmen or congresswomen, um, and senators throughout the United States. The biggest thing to understand, if you're going to meet with somebody and you're trying to talk about a new policy, is understand their own perspective. So what I mean by that is, we're going to talk to somebody from the state of Georgia. I want to make sure I understand what there is to know about, say, peaches, if that's one of their main agriculture commodities, and understand their jurisdiction. Maybe there's a large cattle farm or a grain farm in the area, and understand a little bit more of what they're dealing with on their own constituencies as well. And you realize very important or very quickly that when you have that engagement and you can understand a little bit about their perspective, that ends up coming across in a positive way, and you can actually have a level of influence. The other thing is trying to influence those who actually have the decision-making power. The American system and Canadian system are different in some ways. In some ways, they're very similar. But you find out very quickly if you're trying to change, say, a national policy in Canada, sometimes it's the Minister of Agriculture, but sometimes it might be the Deputy Minister of Agriculture or the Chief of Staff. So understanding how those interactions work within the system is also beneficial. Understanding the voting system. We just went through an American election this couple weeks ago, and I think you can see that there are similarities in the voting structure in the United States that are a little bit different than they are in Canada. They have a electoral college system where we have more of a parliamentary riding system. They're kind of similar but kind of different, and that's understanding how that actually works is beneficial. So for example, in the United States, the Senate is actually elected by the people, and you have 2 senators per state. That means those senators have a lot of power. So if you have, in my mind anyways, meeting with 1 senator was like meeting with 5 Congress people. So having that ability to have that interaction and understand that meant that we tried to put more emphasis on the Senate side of things than the Congress side of things. And similar to everything, what are the goals of any political official? It's really to get reelected. So trying to put in place policies that are beneficial. I worked on one policy in Canada that was beneficial for the Conservative government at the time. It was beneficial for farmers. We sold it to the Chief of Staff at that time for Minister Ritz. They loved the idea, and very shortly that policy was implemented for Canadian agriculture. So again, trying to understand what is beneficial for those individuals as well. I also negotiate, or helped with the negotiations, I should say, on a whole bunch of trade agreements. I won't talk a lot about that, but all to say that, agriculture is agriculture, but there's differing variations. Some of you come from Africa. The way that agriculture is there is a little bit different than what it's here in Canada. And just some of those communication kind of hurdles that you have to go over are a little bit different. So for example, when we would meet with the Chinese or the Japanese, there was just different formalities that you would have to go to, and understanding that ahead of time is definitely beneficial. Right now, as mentioned, I work for Farm and Food Care Saskatchewan. Really, our goal with Farm and Food Care Saskatchewan is to make sure every consumer understands how their food is grown and raised in this country, with a specific emphasis on Saskatchewan. We do have a Canadian brand, and I'll talk about it here in a little bit. But really what happened was the agriculture industry got together in Saskatchewan and Ontario. That's where the two farm and food cares are situated right now, and said that if we're going to do a better job of talking to consumers, we can't have the Cattle Association and canola go individually around and try and sell to consumers what we're doing. We need a generic kind of arm's length removed organization, and really that's what we do. We want to, and I'm in Agribition right now with virtual reality goggles that kids and adults can put on and experience different types of farms throughout Canada, again for that engagement. Here's a few of our different brands. There's no test on it, so you don't have to memorize that. But I do want to say the common thread with all these different things is communication. So that is the single biggest thing that I can find that needs to occur with anybody working in agriculture. So when I realize some of you might have different accents, different mannerisms, different things that might be different in different countries than it is here in Canada. But really the goal of a lot of agriculture and a lot of what we do is based on good communication. And that comes with practice. Like I mentioned, I was a transplant in the United States. I also was living in Mexico for a little while, so trying to understand not only a culture but a new language. Um, but that gives you the idea. You all are coming from different backgrounds, and I think you can understand that communication is one of those keys to actually getting across not only your message, but trying to build that level of trust with whoever you're dealing with. So before I get into some of the tips around that, I like to show this with any somebody that's new to the industry. These are just things that requires zero talent, but it can benefit you so much in your career. And I think they all make sense. But being on time, good work ethic, energy, passion. I meet a lot of different people in the agriculture industry, and that's one thing that I see time and time again. The level of passion in agriculture is second to none. You seem to see burnout in other industries, whether it's the healthcare system or engineering. But in agriculture, we just have this drive and a level of passion because we produce food, right? Like we do something that sustains society on a global scale. So think about that. Have that in the back of your mind with a lot of what you do. So when it comes to the whole idea of building trust, I'm going to give you a few different pointers in terms of trying to build a strong relationship and a strong level of trust, making a great first impression. I've met a lot of people here at Agribition in Regina that, a smile and a handshake. It's one of those things that is so easy to do, but a lot of people actually don't do it. And just having that great first impression, smiling to individuals and actually being willing to show a level of appreciation and understanding goes a long way. I see this a lot in the industry with a lot of the different people I deal with, either on my farm or with farm and food care, that these relationships, when you build them on the solid ground of trust off the start, they end up being long-term relationships. One of the suggestions that I always have is engaging with values. As mentioned already, you saw pictures of my kids and my family. A lot of us have families and or possibly young kids. So to try and make those connections based on that shows that level of care and that level of trust. One thing that I would caution as well is avoid debating, and I realize some of you might be very good at debating, but a debate gets into a conversation of winners and losers, and instead of trying to get into a debate, maybe focus on a discussion around things, and I see that as a way to maybe alleviate some maybe extremely passionate views that others might have that are different than yours, and instead go into a discussion. The other thing is body language. Body language is something we don't actually talk about very much, but it actually does come across very well or very strongly, I should say, when you meet different individuals. This was a UCLA professor that kind of termed it the 738-55 rule. But a lot of your communication when you're interacting with individuals one-on-one, maybe not so much here online, but only 7% is the words you choose. The rest is the tone in your voice and the body language that you exhibit. That's huge. Think about that and practice. I always say if you're getting ready to do an interview with an employer, maybe consider the idea of just answering some questions or talking about yourself in front of a mirror, or record yourself and play it back. You find very quickly certain mannerisms that you have that you might not be aware of. One of the things too, this is a sociology graph that I got from the American Journal of Sociology. It's around the trust model. The trust model, in the past, we thought if we could kind of fill people with facts and figures, we would be able to gain their trust. But the fact of the matter is, there's a lot more emotional intelligence that goes around with it. So in other words, you trust people, and think about the people that you trust in your life right now. There's probably a stronger degree of shared values with that level of trust than the facts around things, right? You could, I don't know, go to a dating site or whatever. You have the facts of everything you are, but if you don't really have that shared value, there's no connection to that other individual. So that's what we're trying to get at with this, trying to figure out the shared values that bring us all together. This was a quote from Stephen Covey. Trust is the glue of life. It's the most essential ingredient in effective communication. It is the foundational principle that holds all relationships. And I think he said it the best with this, and I think we all can relate to this. The best, most effective and efficient relationships we have, there's a strong degree of trust that is there. One of the things that I'm going to leave you, I just have a few slides on this, talking a little bit about understanding perspective when it comes to agriculture. A lot of you probably live in an urban setting. The issue that is coming up more and more is we're having less and less people who live on the land and actually grow the food, and more people who live in an urban setting that don't actually see this. So this changes fundamentally the perspective of what people think of agriculture. And I would encourage all of you, if you haven't done it yet, to make sure you go and visit a farm and talk to farmers or ranchers, people on the land. I know Barb's going to be talking about her acreage and business just outside of Saskatoon. That's a great example of showing different agriculture and agritourism. And it's great when you have the opportunity to see how food is being produced, because it changes your perspective a little bit based on what you may have seen or watched on a social media feed. And this is the reason why. So this is some new data from the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity. It's looking at Canadian food system just in general. And we're always asking consumers, is the direction of the food system going in the right direction or the wrong direction? And the red bars indicate that we're going in the right direction. And then on the right side, the gray bars say we're going in the wrong direction. And you can see we're kind of in some troubling times right now. And I realize my undergraduate was in economics and my master's was in business. A lot of this has to do with the higher price of food. And I think we're all experiencing that right now with food inflation. But that being said, we are losing some ground when it comes to the overall view and perception of the food system here in this country, because people are first of all getting more removed, and second of all, they're seeing that sticker shock when they go to the grocery store. So what can we do to talk to them really about what we're doing? These are the top issues that Canadians are facing. The high cost of food, obviously, I mentioned that before, but availability of healthy food is the fifth one. Out of all the different life issues that you could be faced with here in this country, food and the access and cost of food are two of the highest. So therein lies a little bit of that hurdle that we're trying to try and find some solutions to. We at Farm and Food Care had started a new a brand called Canadian Food Focus. That is reaching more consumers, so we can actually talk about why there is food inflation and what's causing it. But a lot more conversation needs to be had around that issue. The other thing that I do want to make mention, whatever careers you all take in agriculture, you have to realize right off the bat, you're going to be a trusted resource for the food system. So you're an advocate already off the hop talking about the food system. So we want to encourage that. And, you know, farmers, ranchers, scientists are near the top of the list, university professors. But if whatever place you are, whatever kind of position you are in agriculture or what you're going into agriculture, remember that part of what you're doing, I hope you consider reaching out to those who do not understand agriculture, so you can talk to them and relate to them, engage with them, and tell them a little bit more about it. So with that, I am going to stop. You have all my information there. I'll stop sharing my screen. And I will open it up to questions that y'all might have. Tacarra, are you? Yeah, there you go.
Oh, I'm here. So I'm checking to see if anyone has any questions. Please feel free
There's
to raise
lots.
your hand.
I see there's 3 questions over here. Do you want me to
Great.
read them or do you want to read them, Tacarra?
I'll read them out for you.
Okay.
So I've got one here. It says, as a student in agriculture, I'm curious about how policies in the US influence ranching practices and whether there are lessons Canadian ranchers or someone interested in ranching can learn from those experiences. Could you share some insight?
Well, I didn't mention it off the start, but I actually married an Oklahoma ranching woman. So I now own part of a ranch in Oklahoma. So I'm very familiar with ranching practices in the United States. And we did have a ranch in Saskatchewan as well before we got rid of our cattle. In terms of the policies, I'm not too sure the policies are vastly different between American and Canadian cattle. Okay. The cattle side is very similar. There's not a lot of differences. I think where it differs is more of the global policy thing. So the last I guess a week and a little bit ago, President-elect Trump had a toilet tweet about tariffs against Canadian products. That has a huge effect. And I tell you, I can't see any rancher in Oklahoma supporting any of that, or any farmer for that matter in the United States supporting that initiative, because it's going to cost them more money. One of the biggest inputs we put on our land in Oklahoma is actually potash. Potash is coming from Saskatchewan down into the south of the US. And if it's going to cost them 25% more to put down that fertilizer, it's going to cost a lot more for them to grow their cattle or their grass or their grains. So in terms of like experiences that you could have in the ranching business, my suggestion would be to reach out to whichever province you're in, the local cattle association, and just say, is there an opportunity that I could shadow a rancher for a weekend and go out and herd cattle or process cattle? You'll find that a lot of them are very open, willing to especially if it happens to be free labor too, to have that experience. I know we would on our farm, if wherever you're from, if you're from Saskatchewan and you want to visit a grain farm, I'd be more than happy to have you come and sit with me in my tractor or combine.
That is excellent. I'll read the next one. Thank you for the great presentation. You spoke about selling of policy. This is an interesting one. How does that work? Can you sell policy ideas to people in government? How can someone with ideas do that or develop those skills?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. So yes, you are selling policies. So for effectively, the policy that I was talking about, so this would have been back in about 2005 I want to say, when the Harper government first came in, or maybe it was 2004. We had developed different policies within the Canadian Federation of Agriculture that we thought would be great fits for agriculture. They were supported by farmers, but we had to figure out how we could sell it to a government that would fit in with kind of a lineup of different policies. So you have to think of this from two different manners. For example, you got to think of how is it going to be beneficial for the agriculture industry in general, and how can it be supported by the government? Usually we float different ideas to different senior policy advisors. And then based on that, we can kind of fine tune those policies. So for example, the policy that we had in a final draft that was sent to the Conservatives at the time, it wasn't named the same, and they changed a few things up to make it their own, but it effectively was the policy my buddy and I developed. If you're interested in doing that in development of policies in the future, my suggestion would be to possibly work for a member of parliament or a senator in Canada or the United States if you have the opportunity. And then there are numerous different lobby groups that you can go to. But my suggestion would be the Canadian Federation of Agriculture, because they deal with a blanket level of policy across all agriculture.
Okay, wonderful. And I'll just add to that. I'm happy to have follow-up discussions with anybody that might want a little bit more insight as to how we interact with the Canadian government on developing policies. It's quite interesting. I wish we had a lot more time to discuss that, because I'd love to get some more of your insight too, Clinton. But
I was going to say, I know a lot of the folks at the American Embassy, so they typically come out to my farm once every couple years. So,
oh wow,
yeah.
I'll have to make my way that way soon. But yeah, we can definitely follow up with more on that
Yeah.
for you guys if you're interested. And for this one, I'm going to call on someone who has a question. Samuel Odukoya. There you go, sir.
Yeah. Um. Um. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I audible? Yeah. Odukoya somewhere. I'm in Nigeria, and actually, I studied bee agriculture in animal science and fish management. So my question is, for this kind of situation, because agriculture has been my livelihood, like my daily inspiration. So I've my question is it possible for to get a probably like to work in a farm to gain experience and to gain ideas to improve agriculture? Because I don't know how Canadian system works, although. So I'm hoping if I could get like an opportunity to learn, probably with work. So I just wanted to ask the question before initially, like, is it possible we can learn, we can apply for this farm if you can learn from it? Because
I can't understand the
I'm hoping
question.
Okay.
to learn.
So, Samuel, if let me know if I'm getting this right. I'm going to give it a good shot here. So, are you interested in finding out how you might have an opportunity to work with Clinton on the farm, or to possibly shadow his operation and learn about more about what he's doing?
Um, to work with him on the farm to learn, because also I'm a growing youth, and presently I'm learning more day by day. So I think it's going to be a great opportunity working with him and also learn some new skills that I might acquire, and I would love to establish that in his farm.
Okay.
I'm not too sure. Yeah.
So I think I know Clinton mentioned that there are opportunities if you guys are interested to maybe call up folks and see how you would, be able to further engage with them on the farm and learn more things. And I think it would be worth it to definitely follow up with the administrators here, Timmy and Deborah, and they can put you in tune with Clinton, and maybe that would be a better route to take to answer that question, because again, it's a good one, but I think it will require a little further discussion.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you,
Because
Samuel.
presently
Uh,
all right.
Okay, thank you so much. So we had another question here. Someone wanted to know what are the chances of starting a farm in Canada as an international student interested in starting a farm?
You know what? Barb's probably going to be best to kind of highlight some of that, because she kind of flipped from one farm to another farm and has some experience with that. So she might be best. There's obviously the biggest limiting factor is going to be the cost of buying a farm. They're not cheap anymore. But if there's desire, there's different farms that actually are looking for people to slowly work for them over a period of time, and possibly build in some succession to that. So I can't answer that specifically. It kind of depends on where you are. But there are opportunities to start smaller acreages and kind of build on that. And Barb has a great story about that too with her farm.
Okay, and this was a similar one. I'm a Nigerian interested in learning, but work along with farmers in Canada. How can that be possible to work in an agricultural sector in Canada to learn? So I'll just say, to make sure, I'll give you the same answer here that we gave Samuel. We can follow up on that question, and let's explore what opportunities are out there for you guys to increase skills in that area. I'm going to say Samuel number 2. He says, thanks for your presentation. Like you mentioned, we saw that tariff from President-elect Trump. How do you see Canada responding?
I think everybody's going to have an opinion on this. You know what? It's interesting, Samuel. In the last week and a bit, the price of my canola has dropped over $2 a bushel. So to put it in dollars and cents figures, for my production this last year, if I would have to sell it all right now, I would lose roughly about $125,000. So it has a serious effect if you were required to sell that commodity right now. I truly believe by the time President Trump is back in the White House, things will be kind of glazed over a little bit. The issues around our border and say drug trafficking, I think will have been talked about and possibly dealt with on the Canadian side. So I'm a little bit concerned, but not that concerned, because this has happened before and we've had no significant long-term tariffs. So
Okay. Okay, sorry. That's a great answer. Again, definitely a topic we could talk all day about. And
I'd
I
like to talk to you about that.
I'm sure I was gonna say we're happy to have an offline conversation.
Yeah.
A lot of new developments, it looks like, even over the
Yeah.
weekend, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I'm sorry we couldn't get to all the questions. We do have our second guest speaker
Yes.
here. If there's anyone whose question I didn't answer, I promise I'll get you an answer in writing. But we're going to move forward. It looks like. Clint, I want to thank you, Clinton. Thank you so much. Again, that was a excellent presentation. And our next presenter, we have Barb Stefanyshyn-Cote, and I hope I got that correct. Um, so Barb, I won't hold up anyone. I'll go ahead and let you take it away. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, welcome everyone, and I'm so excited to have this opportunity. Very similar to Clinton, Deborah approached us and said that we'd like to be able to share your story, and I said this sounds like an excellent opportunity, and I'm really thrilled to have this chance. So I am going to now try and get my screen organized. Tacarra, can you tell me if you can see this?
I can see it well.
Excellent, thank you.
Mhm.
So I'm going to tell you the story about some farming in Saskatchewan. So in Saskatchewan, you have to realize we are right in the middle of the country. We have a lot of space. We have a lot of arable land. We don't have a lot of people. So things are done a little bit differently here. I came into agriculture very early in my career. I grew up on a farm and I met my husband in the College of Agriculture before we had color photography. So we got married, we went back farming, and here in Saskatchewan, most typically the farms are large grain or cash crop farms where you grow wheat and barley, peas, oats, flax. Canola is a huge project or is a huge crop for us. But we like to say that the best crop we ever grew was our 4 children. So we too have a big family base. We're farming on the farm that John's grandfather started. This is a common theme in our province where people take great pride in passing on the family farm from one generation to the next. We farmed together with John's parents for about a year and a half, and they decided that that was it. They were done farming, and we bought the farm from them and took over. And the best part about that was from then on, we got to make all of our own decisions. The worst part about it was from then on, we had to make all of our own decisions. So we grew that farm from about 700 hectares up to 2,500 hectares. In Saskatchewan, it is very common to be a very diverse farmer. As you will note, Clint says not only does he have the grain farm here in Saskatchewan, he has a farm in Oklahoma. He also works off the farm in a capacity still involved with agriculture. And so we too expanded our reach, and we became partners in a fuel and fertilizer dealership. So it's still tied to agriculture, but it was something that wasn't directly primary production. I went back to university and obtained my master's degree in livestock nutrition, and I ran a consulting service from the farm. So a lot of you will recognize this high-tech computer equipment that we're using. It was a long time ago that I ran the consulting service from the farm, but it was an opportunity that I want to point this out too, that as Clinton spoke about, there are many ways to be involved in agriculture and not be a primary producer. He has done everything from being an executive director to a lobbyist and to full production, as have we. And we're still very involved in agriculture as well. Agriculture has been very good to us. My husband and I were actually named the Outstanding Young Farmers of Canada from a long time ago. We strongly believe in continuous education. Always learning and expanding your knowledge is very important to us. So my husband became involved in an organization called the Canadian Agricultural Lifetime Leadership Program. I became a Nuffield Scholar, which is a scholarship that's available for those in agriculture. And you get to choose your topic in agriculture and go anywhere in the world to study it. So I went to England, Scotland, France, Belgium, Wales. I went to the US, I went to China, Japan, and Australia. And it was really, truly incredible for me to see all of these different types of farming operations and things that I was even familiar with, like grain production, like wheat and oats and flax and barley, how differently they were done in different parts of the world. So I came back home and I told my husband, we have to take our children and go traveling because they need to see what an incredible world there is out there. So we actually took a sabbatical from our farm, and we went and we lived in Mexico for a year, and we went and we lived in Chile for a year. We were very fortunate to be able to see a lot of agricultural production while we were there and take a look at what we were at what opportunities were out there. And while we were there, my husband got a phone call from a friend that said, "You're not doing very much. Would you like to do some consulting?" And my husband said, "Of course. What would you like me to do?" And they said, "We want you to teach farmers how to grow canola." My husband said, "I'm really good at that. What do you want?" And they said, "In Kazakhstan." So again, we had another opportunity to go and see things in a different part of the world. And the most interesting thing that John saw when he was in Kazakhstan was that the company would not work with any farm that was smaller than 50,000 hectares. So that's 50,000 hectares, which was about 20 times the size of what we were farming at that time. The other part about it is that the difference in farming in Saskatchewan, in the center of Canada, and farming in Kazakhstan was not a lot, was not a huge difference. They had the same type of soil, they had the same type of climate, they had the same canola and genetics of canola that we were had in Canada. And so it looked to us that the writing was on the wall that if I wanted to survive in grain production in Canada, I either needed to increase the size of my farm or I needed to do something else. So John and I took the decision, which is often considered sacrilegious in my country, in my province. We decided to sell the family farm because we did not want personally to become larger grain farms. It was just not something that we wanted to do. Our children were not interested in that type of farming. And so if we had stayed, John and I would have had to really expand the farm, which we couldn't see how we were going to do. It was very difficult to get more land, and we couldn't see how the labor side of things were going to work. So we sold the farm, which was started by John's grandparents, and decided to do something very different. So in this photo, this is one of the last photos that John and I took on the farm. You will see we have the grain harvester. John is standing at the back of the truck. And if you notice on the left, it's me that's running the combine. So we worked together very well for an awful long time. So because agriculture was our expertise, John and I grew up on the farm. We were farmers. We have seen and consulted on farming in 5 different continents. We said we still want to be involved in agriculture. So we sold thousands of acres and we bought 80, so 30 hectares approximately. Interesting enough is you cannot grow wheat and barley and peas and flax and oats on 30 hectares and make a living in Saskatchewan. So we decided that we were going to do something that had much higher value. We were going to grow vegetables. And the first year we grew corn, and because John and I are smart farmers, we're the outstanding young farmers, we have degrees in agriculture, we actually started the corn in a greenhouse and transplanted it out, which is unusual here where we come from. And the corn was absolutely beautiful. But the problem was, as smart of farmers as John and I were, we weren't very smart at marketing because we had never had to find a market for our product in the past, and now we did. So we didn't find a place to sell it ahead of time, and we ended up donating an acre of corn to the food bank. that was okay. So the next year we decided that if, you know, 1/2 hectare was a good production, we were going to make it 2.5 hectares. And we planted out 2.5 hectares of corn and got absolutely devastated with a pest called corn borer. We had never seen it before. It destroyed our crop. The corn borer, some of you may know, is a pest that ends up, when you peel back the corn, you have a juicy worm just waiting for you. And we didn't know what had been infected, what hadn't. So we composted 2.5 hectares of corn that year and decided that vegetables sucked. What we did do, though, is we started planting flowers, because I wondered, why do people not take flowers to the market instead of vegetables? We have grown up to 3 hectares of cut flowers. It is not something that is very common where I come from, because we were the largest cut flower farm on the prairies. And it's pretty easy to be the largest when you're the only one. So it was a very steep learning curve, because we had to figure out, how do you plant? How do you harvest? How do you store? Where is your markets? Where do you have to sell this to? And that is something that we sold flowers at the farmer's market. We also started doing events. We did weddings, and we did anniversaries, and any other time when you would need some flowers. And then what we did is John said, Barb, I need your help, and we have to cut back on the flowers. And I said, I don't want to cut back on the flowers. I like the flowers. So we compromised, and we have what is considered a U-pick operation, where people come out to the farm and can pick their own flowers. We hand them a bucket and a pair of pruners, and we send them out to fill the bucket. It is a very fun and heartwarming business. It is a lot of work, because you are now doing production. It comes with a lot of different challenges that we had never had before, as in different pests, different fertilization processes, different storage techniques. It's really a lot different to store a gladiola as opposed to storing a bushel of grain. We added to the farm and grow about 25,000 pumpkins. And while that may sound like a lot, it is not enough for the grocery stores. So what we did is we decided to hold a festival at the farm, where we would invite people out to the farm, and we have games for the children and wagon rides and pumpkin soup and pumpkin pie. And it was a really great opportunity to connect with the customers. The problem that we found with the pumpkin festival is that, I haven't told you about it yet, but our main business is a distillery, and it is we grow grains that go to make gin and whiskey. And the problem with having a pumpkin festival for young children is that 4-year-olds do not buy gin. And so if you want to sell your product, you have to find a customer, bring the customers that are of legal drinking age to the farm. We also grow a lot of fruit. We grow acres of, or hectares of, raspberries, which are the red ones, and haskap, which are the blueberries on the left-hand side. They're a berry that is very well suited to our growing conditions on the prairies, and that is where we grow, or that is what we grow. For those, it is, the haskap berry is very high in anthocyanins, or antioxidants, and so it is a very healthy berry. We had a professor here at the University of Saskatchewan who took a real interest in growing, in plant breeding for the haskap berries. So they're very well suited to growing here on the prairies. We wanted to, on our new farm, really take advantage of our agricultural expertise. We knew how to grow grain. We knew how to harvest it and store it and manufacture with it. We just didn't know how to make alcohol out of it. And that is what was the biggest challenge for us in starting our new farm, which is called Black Fox Farm and Distillery. And what we do here is we grow gin and whiskey. That's what we do. We had a still that was custom made for us in Germany and sent out. And it's been a bit of a learning curve to how to make the products, how to make them that they're very appealing to the customer. Making the shift from large grain production, where you're growing hundreds of thousands of tons of grain to be shipped off to different parts of the world, to a business that is more closely focused on the end consumer, that you actually get to look them in the eye and they say, wow, this is really, really good whiskey. Or they may say, wow, you need to go back to the drawing board. So there's a lot of challenges that have come on this new model of farming that we're engaged in. But we had some precedents. In 1939, King George VI and his wife, Queen Elizabeth, came to visit Canada, and they were gifted what is considered a national treasure, which was Canadian whiskey. And since that time, Canadian whiskey was actually become recognized as fit for a king. What is good about that is that we know that we can produce a very good quality product. What on the bad side of things is that Canadian whiskey has now kind of fallen off the wayside as a prestigious whiskey. You hear a lot more now about Scotch and American whiskeys and Japanese whiskeys and Irish whiskeys, and you don't hear about Canadian whiskey. So John and I, my husband John and I, have decided that our goal is to bring back the prestige that Canadian whiskey once held. And we strongly believe that we can do that because we believe in terroir. Now, terroir is, it kind of is an encompassing term that you hear a lot about in wine, and you don't hear as much about it in whiskey or gin. But what it refers to is all of the elements that come into play that influence the flavor of an ingredient. So in wine, how did all these things play into developing flavors in the grapes? In our industry, how does the climate and the topography and the precipitation and the geography and even the choices that the farmer makes as to what varieties to grow influence the flavors that are developed. And here in Saskatchewan, as you can see in this photo, we have a location that is very flat. It is very wide open, and you likely know, we get some really wickedly cold days. But it is a combination in our growing season of the long days with lots of sunshine and the cool evenings that not only concentrate flavors in the grain for our gin and whiskey, but they also concentrate colors in our flowers. So flowers that are grown in Saskatchewan, the same varieties grown in southern locations our colors are much more vibrant. We really wanted to base our distillery on authenticity. And this talks to the trust that Clinton talked about. Right now, there are huge distillers in this world. There is a group out of Kentucky. It's called Maker's Mark. So some of you may be familiar with that bourbon. But to give you an idea of scale, what Maker's Mark can make in 1 day would take us 7 years. So we have this opportunity to speak directly to the customer saying, I am the farmer. I am the one who grows these ingredients that go into my still that makes this fantastic whiskey. And therefore, I can control everything from start to finish. And we believe that that's a model that'll be very appealing to farmers, or pardon me, to consumers in the future. We like to say we control the entire process from crop to connoisseur. And part of the reason we chose that phrase is because seed to sip is already trademarked by Anheuser-Busch. We grow calendula flowers, we grow rhubarb, we grow cucumbers. Those are the ingredients that we use in our gin. We grow triticale, which is a wheat rye hybrid grain that we use for making our base spirits. And the part about being the farmer that touches everything from crop to connoisseur is that we really have the chance to embrace and engage and initiate sustainability practices. We use minimum tillage, we use crop rotations, we do integrated pest management. In the distillery, we recycle 95% of the water that we touch. But all of these things are really truly based on our agricultural background, because we know that we need to leave the soil in better condition for the next generation than when it came into our care. And it's worked out quite well for us. We have some pretty amazing products, and we've won some very spectacular awards on the whiskey as well as on the gin. Our whiskey was named one of the top 20 whiskeys of the world. Our cask gin came home as the world's best. I just married a guy with a good palate. That's my claim to fame. Part of the problem we have with any business that is touching the customer in Saskatchewan is that we don't have a lot of customers. Our entire population is 1.3 million people. So we must look to export markets to build our business. And in building alcohol in Canada, each province is like its own little country. So if I want to sell across Canada, I have to deal with 13 different countries. So our business model has been to look to larger markets outside of Canada. We currently sell in, we do sell in Canada. As you can see, we've got in Alberta, in Saskatchewan, we've got a bit in Ontario, but we also do the UK, Denmark, Germany, China, and most recently Dubai and Abu Dhabi, because those are large markets. Our whiskey and our gin are ultra premium. We've decided that we want to go for the highest quality classification that we can, and we have the terroir, we have the expertise to do that. So that is what we have based our business on. We also open up our business for people to come as agri-tourist location. We do tours and we do tastings, we host events. We can have events in contact with what they're looking for. And that is really important to us. I don't think John and I have ever worked harder in our lives than we have these last 10 years in building the distillery and creating this new farm that we've started. But it has definitely been fun. It is something that we really put our heart and soul into. We like being able to talk agriculture to those that come to visit. We like the connection that we give to people right back to the land. So for us, it's been a very rewarding journey. And if you ever get the chance to come out and see us, I would welcome you and invite you to come out. And that is the end of my presentation. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask them.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Barb. That was awesome. I will say I had a chance to visit, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience, and I hope to make my way back there soon. I really think that the model that you guys have is extremely creative. I love we talked to a lot of the folks that were sort of tending the flowers and also within the distillery, and just this commitment to sustainability and really cultivating such an excellent customer experience. I agree with you. I think it goes a very long way. We do have some questions here. I will jump right into them in the interest of time and not just keep rattling on with my own questions. So the first one that we have here is just says, thank you, Barb, for your great presentation. What leadership qualities have been most critical to your success at Black Fox Distilleries, and how can students develop these skills while pursuing their studies?
Oh, that's a really excellent question. And so on the leadership side, you have to realize that as this new model is for us, when we were grain farming, I showed you the photo, it was John and I. We had one other person that was hired to help out seasonally, and they would be the driver of the combine, but John and I did the rest of it there. Now we have a team of up to 30 people at a time, and leadership, I've found out, it's a little different than when you're leading your children as to leading someone else that's there. So as Clinton said, communication. A lot of times I know what I want to have done, but if I don't communicate it clearly to somebody to pass on that information, it doesn't get done the way I want it, and then therefore it's not that doesn't happen. So communication is critical. So being able to tell people succinctly what you want them to understand is probably a very, very good skill to learn and practice. When you're asking somebody for directions, or when you're giving directions to somebody, think about what they're receiving. And that's something we can all work on at any point in time. The other thing that I found is very good is just being able to, let's see, what's the word that I want people to, is to share your enthusiasm and your passion and to bring them on. And it's really interesting. Again, Clinton mentioned this too, that agriculture students and people involved in agriculture are recognized as highly trustworthy. And so we want to make sure that we maintain that, and that we do. And again, this is something that doesn't cost any money. You walk the talk. If you say you're going to do this, you do it. It's not just greenwashing. It's not just saying things. It's actually doing what you say you're going to do to build trust with people. And once you have their trust, you need to maintain it. You've got to be careful not to destroy it, because you can do that very readily too.
That's a extremely good point. And I'll just say, because both you and Clinton, I think, touched on this issue of trustworthiness and also connecting with the consumers. It's something that even working for the U.S. government, am quite critical of us in doing. I'd like to see more of it, right? People are confused, people are misinformed, people are oversaturated with a lot of different information about food. We don't know where it's coming from. Some of it's generated by just different programs. And so that trend and seeing this increase in technology just makes the the trust in these relationships even more important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for touching on that. I have another one here. It says for students dreaming of starting their own agribusiness, how important is gaining global exposure, and what's the first step they should take to explore available opportunity?
All right, I'm going to tell you that the very first step that you should take to explore this is find out if somebody wants it. It is very, I'm going to say we have a bit of a problem in agriculture saying that I can grow this, therefore you should buy it. Well, that's not always true, because we need to, especially if you want to do a business that is closer to the customer, you need to find out what that customer wants. So we started off making vodka, which is, and we found out quite quickly that nobody really, while they say they want an artisanal vodka that they can trace back to they're not going to pay for it. And if they're not going to pay for it, you're not going to be in business very long. So if you want to start something, whether it's you're going to produce honey, or you're going to, you know, produce alcohol, or if you're going to do flowers, but if you're going to do value added, if you're going to bake, or if you're going to do flour, like as in ground flour or something like that, find out that you have a market for it. Find something that people are looking for before you jump in and say, oh, I can do this, because we are very good at growing things that people don't want.
That is a very, very good point. I'll just quickly comment. I've done a little bit of agribusiness development training in West Africa. In specifically, I'll just mention Liberia, and it's always amazing to me because you go to the colleges and they're like, we want to produce this, we want to produce that, and like you guys have to really, really, really identify a market, or else, it's so critical, especially when you have limited resources. If you got a ton of money laying around, you have the benefit of throwing spaghetti at the wall. You can do what you want. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. If you do not have a ton of money laying around, which, is most folks, you really do need to put a lot of thought not only into, just the process of growing or, kind of producing a product, but where or who is going to buy it? Where is it going from? And so it's a challenge that I love to issue to all of the students that I've worked with, is to really look at, identify a market, look at the product, adapt it to that market in a new and exciting way for them to use or enjoy or consume. And a lot of times you'll find that that's like a really good key foundation for, success in your agribusiness. So thank you so much for mentioning that. I have another question for you here. They say, thank you, Barb. This is from Samuel number 2 again, Samuel Ariyibi. He says, it feels like you saw the future of agriculture 10 years ago, and you are now in a position to benefit from it. What are the keys to driving sustainable agriculture?
I do think that almost every farmer really has sustainability at heart, because we touch the soil, and because we grow things, and because we raise animals, and we do all of these things, we if anybody hands-on knows that if we don't take care of this, it's not going to be there in the future. So we need to do the best that we can. What's driving? I think everybody's recognizing the importance of it. And I think they're going to start realizing that they're going to have to start putting some money down to make sure that we can do the agricultural practices that we need to do. Because a lot of times people make choices because of economics. I know that the best process for me is to take my compost from the still and spread it out as fertilizer, but it takes time, it takes effort, and it might be easier for me and cheaper for me to do something else, but we need to step up and see that there is that it pays to do the right thing. That's what we need to do, and we need to really talk to that other 82% of the population that has never seen a farm before. There's only, in Canada, it's 1.6%. That leaves what, 98.4% or whatever that number is of people that don't have any idea of what we're doing. And so we've been saying this for years, ever since I started in agriculture, but it's even more critical now.
Absolutely. And you think the numbers are rough for Canada. I bet we could say the same about Chicago. Absolutely. Absolutely wonderful food, completely disconnected from agricultural systems. Let's see, we've got a few more for the students that are asking about internships and possibilities to learn on the farm. Again, we'll follow up with you guys through email. This is another really good one. Your travels have exposed you to diverse agricultural practices. How do you see Canadian agriculture in comparison with those other countries, especially as it relates to youth?
Okay. Good question. Canadian agriculture tends to be, I would say, much more industrialized in that we don't have the labor pool to draw from. And so in a lot of ways, that's a disadvantage. It also, when prices are very poor, or when there are things like BSE and other real challenges to industries, you see a huge exodus of youth from agriculture because there's many opportunities in other locations. How can youth, what have I seen in other countries as well for youth opportunities? I wish I could tell you more. I haven't really looked specifically at youth in those countries and how to incorporate them. But what I do know about youth is they always come with new ideas and new perspectives. A lot of us take a look at this and say, oh, those young guys, they've come up with these ideas and we tried that and it didn't work. Well, you know what? At one point in time, I was young too. And I sure didn't want to do things the way my parents did it. And thank goodness for that, because every generation, we wouldn't have progress if we didn't have the youth coming in and saying, let's try something new. And so I think in agriculture, we have to embrace the youth because there's only 1.6% of us that are doing it now. And believe me, we're not young. And so we're going to have to bring them in. How that's going to happen, I wish I knew. I'm terribly sorry. I don't have those answers.
It's definitely a challenge all over the world. There's like a global movement to make agriculture sexy again, right? Everybody, they've traded in the fields for fancy jobs and the city areas with their suits and ties and cubicles and things like that. And
dedicated work hours.
Yeah, dedicate. There you go. But I joke a lot about this because it is such a big issue, especially in Africa. I know I've worked on a lot of initiatives in Ghana around this, and it was amazing. We brought in one of the speakers, and the folks there. I invited a lot of the students, and they're like, what do we come to hear these farmers talk about, right? And they're so proud of, I got my job and I'm doing this, and good for them, right? But the guy comes in and he's like, yeah, I left Accra, which is like the major city. He's like, and I went back to go farm, like he's in one of the rural areas. And the kids were, the other students, they're all about the same age, kind of laughing at this guy. Till he's like, yeah, my first couple of years, I didn't make much. But as my fruit started producing, because there's a shortage of fresh fruit for fruit juice production, he's making like 300,000 or 400,000 US dollars, and they could not believe it. Like the opportunities are there. And I think, to that point, if we can collectively in this industry do a better job at exposing the young people to what truly happens along these value chains, it might jog a little bit more enthusiasm about their potential and their participation. So again, I love what you guys are doing. I think that's awesome to showcase. And there's another question I'll pull here, and I'm actually going to throw this at both you and Clinton, if Clinton's still there with us. They asked, if you were to give advice to yourself when you first started out, what advice would you give so we can learn from you?
Well, I'm going to start. And I think the advice I would give to myself is look big, look bigger than what we did. You know, my husband and I came back from college and said, oh, well, we'll start farming with John's parents because that's what we're supposed to do. And I think if we had looked bigger and further afar and seeing what's out there, we might have been doing what we're doing now a lot earlier in life. Because there's, I guess what I'm saying is you don't just have to go back to the farm and do what they're doing exactly. If you want to go back, and you can do whatever you want, and again, shoot for the stars. If you know, if something doesn't happen, then you land on the moon. My goodness, that's still better than not trying anything at all. So I would not be afraid to take risks and do things, because the other thing that you're going to do is nobody has a crystal ball. I have no idea what's going to happen I have no idea what's going to happen in the next hour. And so I'm going to make a decision on what I know right now and the information I have, but then I'm going to live like that was the best decision I could have ever made. And I'm going to, I'm going to make it happen. And that's what you guys can do, is you can make these things happen.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I don't think Clinton, he may have popped off. I know he was
Yeah,
working from somewhere. Just one final one. I'll call on Abraham Abu. He put something here in the chat, but I'm not sure what you wanted to ask. So Abraham, go ahead. Okay.
Sorry, I think it was an error. I'm sorry.
Okay. No worries, no worries. Okay, well, with that, then I will just say again to you, Barb, thank you so much for coming on and sharing these gems with everybody. This was great. I bet I probably took more notes than the students on here. Very, very fascinating story, and definitely wishing you a ton of success with the business there. And as I said, looking forward to getting out there to see you soon.
I like that idea. And thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Deborah, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay. Wow. Thank you so much, Barb. Yeah, I remember I was at your place as well, and that was where we met. So thank you very much for taking time to talk to us today. We really enjoyed the talk. So as we close today's webinar, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to our moderator, Ms. Birmingham, for skillfully guiding us through the webinar today, and to our speakers, Mr. Clinton Monchuk and Ms. Barb Stefanyshyn. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts today. And thank you to all our audience as well for participation and your enthusiasm in asking questions and engaging with our speakers. So on behalf of the International Youth in Canadian Agriculture, so thank you all and have a good weekend. Yeah.
Thank you.